Know yourself. Absolutely know yourself. It's so funny because you're so focused on everyone who's starting a business it's natural to be, focused on everything from the customers, the product, the ops, etc. But take a second and do you know yourself? Because you are the leader. At the end of the day, right? You are launching something. And if you don't know very innately your strengths and your weaknesses and who you are and what makes you tick and what you need, right? Because you are it's like you're the generator, you're the sole inspiration, you are it. And my favorite publication of all publications is Harvard Business Review, right? I read it every couple of months when it gets to my mailbox. I get so excited and I sit there and I read it, and I love it because it's data driven.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Karmen Berentsen. And Karmen grew up in Minnesota. And her dad ended up leaving her the family when she was 4 years old. Fast forward, went to high school in Minnesota and I think Arizona. Mother passed away while she was in high school and caused her to grow up quick, which I'm sure it would for anybody. Went on to college in Southern California. Walked away from the experience knowing she needed a ton of, with all of that background, needed a ton of money, needed to be her own boss and wanted to be successful. And so at 33 years old, sold her first business, made a good exit. At the same time, had gone through some divorces with the marital, and decided that was going to go on to open another company, but the boyfriend at the time told her to stop, take a break, and take some time for herself. So go off to Hawaii, and did that for a bit, and during that time allowed her to work through some issues of hadn't ever worked through some death of the family members. Did that for about 18 months, started a second business, and now she's on her third business. So with that much as introduction, welcome on the podcast, Karmen.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Absolutely excited to have you. So I just did a very, very condensed version of a much longer journey, but let's unpack that a bit. So tell us a little bit about how your journey got started growing up in Minnesota.
Well, Minnesota was great because it was northern Minnesota, and my grandparents had 180 acres on a farm up there, and my sister and I actually had to entertain each other and entertain ourselves. So it's something that now, as a mom, I have an 11-year-old, and she absolutely hates it. She has learned not to come in and say, "Mom, I'm bored," because when she does, I go, "Oh, yay!" And she's like, first time she looked at me and she's like, "No, Mom, I'm bored." And I was like, "Yay." And she's like, "Why?" And I said, "Because only after boredom comes creativity." So, and it's really true. It's really true. And definitely her being an only child, I have, you overschedule and you entertain and you go, not even helicopters, not so much protect her as really invest in her. And sometimes there's a little bit too much investing. So, so I did not have that. I had the extreme opposite. I was shipped off from a mom who needed a break after raising 2 girls by herself, 300 and some days a year. Right. And so we were shipped off to my grandparents who, were what you think of quintessential grandparents who did their life and kept us alive and fed us. Like that was their job, not entertaining us. But it was fantastic because I think it really did lead to a lot of my self-sufficiency and my grit and my drive and a lot of other beautiful things. But yeah, the reason why that happened because I had a father who definitely, I love to call him Peter Pan. He just never grew up, and definitely was a dreamer. And I think the difference of I've dissected a lot. I've unpacked a lot. What's the difference between him as an entrepreneur and myself? And one of the biggest things he taught me is what not to do. And he used to tell me that he was like the great white shark. They always swam by themselves and trusted no one and did it on their own. And I am just the extreme opposite. I am a huge collaborator. I don't believe that I am the smartest person in the room. And I love building teams. And so I would hate to be a shark by myself. I'm a herd animal.
So now with that kind of as the background, and like I said, having a lot of things, and one of the other things I can't really, you mentioned a bit when we chatted before, was that you had your mother that passed away during, I think it was high school. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
So now,
She got sick when I was in high school. She passed away my freshman year in college because I went to high school early. So I went to high school at 17. I skipped my senior year. Yeah, and yeah, one day we were playing Uno and laughing, and I was a sophomore in high school, and the next morning I found her in a grand mal seizure and was calling 911 having this weird role play voice with myself of you're only to call 911 in case of emergencies. And then I was saying, this is an emergency, right? Because we've been taught that as kids. And so, or we've been taught it our whole life, right? And all of a sudden you have this real emergency in front of you, and we don't plan for those. And so, yeah, she was given 3 months to live. She had a glioblastoma brain tumor, but she ended up living 18 months. And I'm very thankful for those 18 months, but it also, those 18 months definitely hardened me a bunch because, I needed to take care of her. My sister had already gone off to college, and so she was out of the house and gone. And then, my dad had obviously left when I was young. So, and so I was for all practicality, the only adult. And that was also my survival. We all have different ways we survive things. And mine was to turn into logical mode, right? Feel nothing and take care of everything. And, act like the adult and take everything on. And that also protected my heart from feeling anything.
So now, sounds like it was certainly I guess I'll put it, eventful childhood, and it caused you to grow quick and learn a lot of things. And I think one of the things you mentioned is you kind of going through, father, being Peter Pan, mother losing her at a reasonably early ages, that you kind of through those experiences decided you needed to earn a ton of money, be your own boss, and or figure out how to be successful. Is that about right? Or kind of or remind me how that went?
No, you're absolutely correct. I think now, obviously, at the time of 17, I was not this wise as I am at 48 now, right? And even in my 30s, when I had this discovery of like, oh, that's why I did this, right? At the time, I just thought, well, no, I was doing what was needed to do. But now looking back, I remember like it was yesterday, walking into the memorial, center and seeing my mom in that casket. And I thought, if I start crying, I will wake up 50 years old, a drunk on a park bench. And because no one in my life was big enough in a couple months to open the curtains and say, okay, time to get out of bed, time to keep living. Right. And so I literally was like, I can't feel anything. I can't feel any of this. And I am just going to go into, supersonic, ambition and drive. And then, I'm gonna make enough money that I don't need anyone. And then, unconsciously on it, but now it's very obvious. When I started making money, I bought my friends, right? And I very consciously bought them. So anyone who actually couldn't be bought, I didn't pursue or let into my inner circle, because then I had control and I was insulated and my heart was protected. But at the end of the day, obviously, you're extremely lonely. And you're also extremely narcissistic and and have no mirror of anything, right? Because everyone's praising you because you're buying them everything from trips on yachts to, to a great lifestyle. And they're not going to, and then there are the people originally who could be bought. Right. And so it's like this system that feeds itself.
Yeah. And let me dive into it, because so you graduated and, I get that that's where you came in at, and you're saying, hey, but money can solve a lot of issues. Buy your friends, they're going to love it. They get lots of nice stuff, but it probably doesn't establish those deeper relationships you're looking for. With that, what were you doing at the time, or what was this, coming out of school, what was the employment or job, or what was the startup or the business that you got into?
Right. So I was actually a biochem major. I went to school on a full ride academic scholarship, and I was going to be a poster child doctor. And I was, the school paid for room, board, books, everything for me to be their poster child doctor. And then literally I went into the day of the MCAT. I did not go. And in the middle of the MCAT, very intentionally, I went into the director of the department of the science department and came in. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, are you sick? We'll reschedule." And I said, "No." I said, I'm not going." And he's like, "Yeah, you have to go." And I was like, "No, I had to keep a 3.98 GPA, which I did. And I had to, I had to be a student. But I'm not going to med school." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I want to make money." And he said, "Well, you're going to be a doctor." And I said, "No, after med school and all the loans and everything else, and I said, by the time I start making money after residency and everything else, I'm going to want to have babies." And so I said, "And the only real way to make money is to hire doctors." And so I said, "I don't have to be a doctor to hire doctors." And that's what I ended up doing. So I ended up walking out of college and getting a job with JD Edwards Software. They're an ERP, enterprise resource planning, who got bought by Oracle years later. But they and I worked for them as a peon consultant. And I think it's really important that I went to work for them because my mother was a senior account manager. And so I knew some people there, and I also, thought I liked what she did. She solved problems, and I thought I could do that. And so I could be a consultant. And I actually was one of, they hired 10 college hires who went right into consulting for years for the company. They had only hired people who had 10 plus years of business experience, right? So you had to be a plant manager for 10 years or a seat controller for 10 years. And then if you wanted to come work for the software and you knew the business already, then they taught you the software to be the consultant that helped other companies implement, right? So they literally did this one hire of a round of 10 people, and they all came from Georgia Tech and MIT, and then myself. And so connections, networking really did work. And I got to be part of this 10 hire, but then I held my own ground, and I was a great consultant and got billable very fast and everything else. But what happened is that when, companies implementing software would spend tens of thousands of dollars on process reengineering, right? Best practices, and then similar tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on configuration. And then they would flip the switch after these people from the business who had been on the project team for 18 months and figured they would just go back and tell everyone on their company how to use the software. And yes, they did documentation and they did compliance and stuff like that, but no one got passionately excited about the people, right? And about that transformation of what they currently knew, and now what's the gap, and creating that.
So now, how does that take you to where, because you mentioned that, I think at age 33 or so, you'd built a company, made an exit, and,
Yep.
and had that as a kind of a first entrance.
Yeah.
Help me fill in the gap. How did you get to there?
Well, so I literally kept seeing this opportunity that no one focused on the people after, and I knew the systems worked, right? Because I'm the peon consultant who put in 1,000 purchase orders and then received 1,000 purchase orders, right? And I did every variance, and I knew they worked, but I heard, and also, literally up to the point of litigation, companies were suing JD Edwards because the software failed. Well, software didn't fail, right? What failed was no one trained them. And so I just, I decided I wanted to go independent. And first, actually, I went to the executives at JD Edwards and I said, "I have this brilliant idea. We should do this for training and end user training." And they said, "Our focus is on the software," right? Which is great as a business owner to know what you're about, right? And so don't fault them at all, et cetera. But then I went to the partners, IBM, Deloitte, et cetera. Arthur Andersen at the time, now Accenture, right? I can date myself with that. And I went to them and I said, you guys are doing training. This is how we should do it. And they patted me on the shoulder and said, oh, sweet, innocent little 26-year-old, you have no
Mhm.
idea that people don't pay for training. And, and we do the necessary evil and we do, documentation, but that's what we do. And,
So yeah, maybe just so we can, or make sure we get the full journey, help us
yeah.
to jump forward just a little bit to get to where you made the exit, because we still got quite a bit of journey we want to make sure we hit on.
Oh, so but with that, I went to them first. And I think that's important. But then I went independent, and I just so I went back to a couple clients that I had worked on with their blessing, and then 3 weeks after I had gone independent, I had 6 clients, all who wanted me or who were wanting to sign contracts, and everyone said start a company, and I said I was a biochem major. I don't know about starting a company, but then I called a law firm and had them incorporate me, and called an accountant, and and then fast forward, that's the easy part. 7 years later, we had, we were doing dozens of implementations. Every, Fortune 50 company was implementing, JD Awards. We're doing $3 to $5 million training projects. And, I had, consultants around the world. And so I sold that company, not looking for an exit, but a large company came in and who said, we don't want to grow training organically. And I said, I'm not for sale. And they said, everything's for sale for the right price. And I said, that you're correct. And we did an acquisition and sold it. And so, it was a huge success. I was a multimillionaire at 33, and I thought that I had done it all. And yet very quickly, it wasn't fulfilling. Like a lot of, I'm not the first one to tell that, right? You're chasing after something, you finally get it. And I was just kind of lost. So I stopped, as you're saying. Yes. And with some really good coaching, I stopped, and when I actually stopped, and I fell apart. I absolutely fell apart, and I started crying really hard. And I realized that I really missed my mom, and I really, for real, had been abandoned by my dad. And I just was exhausted. I had been running from mourning that, from truly just mourning it. Right. And it had made me very volatile a lot of times, and because I couldn't feel anything. And that's the thing I didn't realize for a number of years, is that if you can't feel sadness and mourning, you also can't feel real joy, right? You don't have 2 different barometers of happiness and bad feelings, right? Or happy and sad feelings. And so so I finally did some healing and sat in it. And then I discovered, I was like, you know what? I'm kind of fun just as I am, and not because I will pay for the dinner or because I have another brilliant idea, right? I'm just, we're all kind of really cool creations in of ourselves.
Mm. So now, as you, and I think it makes sense. So you finally go hard, you build a business, it's successful, you can make a good exit. And then as you're taking that break, it gives you time to reflect, and probably all those things that you'd, overridden or didn't have time to consider. Now you have time to consider, and you're taking that break and saying, okay, what does success mean, and how did I get here, and what do I want to do next, and all those things. And so it sounds like, I think when we talked, you went to Hawaii and took about an 18-month break, or by the time you were done with it. And then how did you decide kind of what you're going to do, or how you're going to re-engage, or where you went from there?
Yeah, well, I got back. I mean, honestly, life kind of steers you. It's really interesting because we can have best laid plans, but the stock market crashed, and I was getting really nice dividend checks. And I mean, in all honesty, it was really one of those days I woke up and I was like, I need cash, because I have a really nice lifestyle now, and I need to work again. Right. And so I called a couple of companies, because my 2-year non-compete was up, and I called a couple of companies and was just going to do some independent. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're back, and start another company, and now this, and we need this. And there was a bolt-on software company that wanted and more of an online training solution. So I did a contract with them to start that, and that turned into another company. But while I was doing that company, I also had a baby and became a mom. And then while all that was going on as well, the second company was really definitely a means to an end, means to a very just cash, right? Until the stock market recovered. And, and so it wasn't in my heart at all. Right. I never knew that. It was a job. But then I walked into A-Line, which is now right behind me. Not this location though, but there was an A-Line in Denver. The original owners are brilliant, two wonderful fashionistas who wanted a fabulous hobby and were really good buyers. But it was one of the few stores I shopped in Denver, and I went in to shop, and I learned that they both moved overseas and the lease was up and they were going to close the store. And I thought, if I ever wanted to combine my business skills with my love of fashion, now is the time. And I also been really, really disconnected in Denver, being in software, being so global, right? I traveled so much, and I knew my neighbors, but I really didn't know a lot of people. And so I didn't want to just sit on a bunch of boards and stuff like that. I wanted a very, just kind of natural and organic way to get to know other women. And I thought, if I'm shopping here, there's probably other women like me who are shopping here, right? And so anyhow, so I decided to buy the store, and I did. So it was an asset purchase, and easy. Bought the store, and they were doing 300,000 in annual revenue. And the next year we did 700,000, and the next year we did 1.4, and then we did 1.7. And this was in Landmark. This isn't a strip mall in, a lifestyle center. That's what they're called now, right? And so, but in a nice part of town, right? But it's still a strip mall. And so, and I knew that, and it was very different. It wasn't most boutiques, or the traditional sense of a boutique is that you have exclusivity, right? You get these great brands and you protect them fiercely. Mine wasn't about, yes, that was kind of like the common denominator. It's like Four Seasons having good count sheets, right? You have to have that, right? It has to be clean. But then why do you choose them over a St. Regis or over, a Montage or whatever? Well, is it it's experience, it's the service, it's the connection. And so to me, that was what A-Line needed to be about, because I hate shopping. So people are always amazed when they learn that about me. They're like, wait, you own 15,000 square feet, 4 stores, about to open a 5th, and you hate shopping. I'm like, yes, I love fashion. I love the end result. I love the power of fashion. I hate the work of shopping. Right. And so, but I had gotten to the point financially and that I could hire a stylist. So I had a stylist who did the shopping for me. Right. And so that model that I experienced over in Europe, and those professional stylists who do the work for you, and who know their inventory, right? Who know, in this year, this size, and this year, this size. And I always say, it's kind of like a guy shopping for a suit. You guys walk in, they go, oh, you're a 44 long. And they pull the coats that will look good on you. And then they pin them, and then you're out of there. And that's exactly what we were doing. I wanted to do for women, but not for every day, I call it casual chic, right? How do you run around, and how are you still put together, and not in Lululemon, right?
So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So then I bought it, and we grew, like I said. But then I really had a pause, because financially I was making more money in the return stock market than I was in the investment that I had done in A-Line, right? Because it wasn't profitable. And so I knew I had a crossroads, you know what I mean? I had a fork, and I needed to either just sell the business after a couple of years in and say that was fun, I didn't lose any money, right? Or I need to scale it if I wanted to make money. And so I've scaled it. And so now we have 4 locations here in Denver, and a dozen stylists who are all on salary with medical benefits, true professionals. We don't have any store managers, and no one can. Often they're like, oh, well, you're store manager. I was like, I don't have store managers. And they're like, how do you have 4, beautiful 4,100, 4,000 square foot stores, without store managers? And I was like, I don't hire people who have to be managed. I hire professionals, right, who are driven, who are entrepreneurs themselves, right? And then we give them the framework and the support and the training and everything else, but I don't hire people who have to be managed. So
no, and I think that's probably a great transition to the two questions I always ask at the end of each episode, just because we're now at the present of where kind of the journey has brought you to today. And it's always a great time because I love to ask two questions as we get to the present day of the journey. So I'm going to jump to those right now.
Love it.
First question I always ask is, so along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? And what'd you learn from it?
I made many. And I think, but one of the ones that just really sticks out is I had the brilliant idea of putting one style on the floor. So usually, when you walk into a store, right, this blouse, if you have a full size run, you have the extra small, small, medium, large. But I decided, just like Europe does, that we would put one on the floor and then we'd go to the back stock, right? Because the reality is in one blouse, I might be an extra small, and another blouse, I might be a medium, just because that's how it's running and this. And I thought, well, that's what the stylists do. And then they'll grab the right thing. It backfired so badly, because, oh my gosh, because also, when someone who's a medium comes in and all that's on the floor is extra smalls, or that's what they see first, because that was the first small, we put the smallest size on the floor, right? It completely is the antithesis of what I wanted to do of women's empowering, because we really do. We stock sizes 0 through size 12, jean 24 through 32, because it's really important to me that you can be a size 8, you can be a size 10, you can be a size 12 and be beautiful and feel seen and relevant and confident. And, and so it was the antithesis. And then a lot of, oh my gosh, it was one of the worst decisions. And how I knew it was a bad decision was because within a couple of weeks, sales started to dip. But I thought, there's a lot of factors. And after 2 months, it was the worst 2 months of sales history in our existence from a percentage, right, as we were growing. But what was wonderful about it was one of the team was the one who was like, Karmen, we can't do this, and this is why. So it proved that rumbling, from Brene Brown's term, is really good, and having a team that trusts you. But I will have to say about failures, one thing I'd love to share is just that someone early on told me, you are going to have big failures. And I thought, oh, that's so awful to hear. But they said, when you swing, Karmen, you swing for the home run. And that's why you get home runs.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great takeaway, because I think that too often people are worried about the failures, and I think everybody hits those. And whether or not it's a drastic failure and the business goes under, whether or not it's a mistake that you're able to recover from, or whether or not it's just something that you wish you'd done before, you're always going to look and say there are different things that had I known I would have done differently. And you can look back and say those are mistakes or those are failures. But I think that it also is, if you never make those failures, if you don't ever put yourself in a situation where you can make those failures, you're definitely not going to be able to have those successes. So I think that's definitely a great mistake to learn from, and a great takeaway. Second question I always ask is, now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them? Know
yourself. Absolutely know yourself. It's so funny because you're so focused on everyone who's starting a business it's natural to be, focused on everything from the customers, the product, the ops, etc. But take a second, and do you know yourself? Because you are the leader. At the end of the day, right? You are launching something. And if you don't know very innately your strengths and your weaknesses and who you are and what makes you tick and what you need, right? Mm-hmm. Because you are it's like you're the generator, you're the sole inspiration, you are it. And my favorite publication of all publications is Harvard Business Review, right? I read it every couple of months when it gets to my mailbox. I get so excited and I sit there and I read it, and I love it because it's data driven. And years ago, they did a great article where they surveyed and researched thousands of leaders, right? From C-level executives to entrepreneurs. And they took the most successful people in the world, and they literally tried to look for a pattern of what made them successful. Everything from upbringing to, being a sibling order, to demographics, to economics, to no college degree, to, dropping out of college, to going to Harvard. And nothing was similar. There was no common denominator. Obviously there's pods and there's pools of things, but there's nothing except for when they got to the point of self-awareness. Mm-hmm. All of them were extremely self-aware. right? They had done work on themselves and they were extremely self-aware leaders. And I think it's something that people don't think about when they're starting a business. But I would say, do you know yourself, and how well do you know yourself? And if you have to, take care of you and to be the soul energy and the solar system of this, venture you're about to embark on.
Awesome. No, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice and a great takeaway. So, well, now as we wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Every social media platform, from LinkedIn to Facebook to Instagram, to is just my name, Karmen Berentsen, with a K, Karmen, Berentsen, Berentsen. Very easy to find me. And then A-Line is just literally 3 words, A-Line Boutique. And so you can find all of that on any platform, all of the above. And I'd love to yes, style women who want to feel seen, relevant, confident, beautiful. Sorry, Devin, we can't style you. We don't do men's.
You can style my wife, so maybe someday there'll be an opportunity there. Or
exactly.
my 3 daughters. So either all plenty of opportunity.
There you go. There you go. We get a lot of guys out of dog houses. I always say, you can send flowers, but if you send her an outfit that she rocks and we nail it, you are totally out of that dog house, right? And then if you really need to get out big time, you have us pack a suitcase that literally everything fits in there for her, and you whisk her off somewhere, and we do that well. So.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage everybody to reach out, use some a great resource, and definitely is a fun, a great person to connect up with, and nothing else, make a new best friend. So, well, with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners. One, make sure to click share, review, and leave us any feedback, because we always want to make sure that everyone finds out about all these awesome episodes. And last but not least, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Thank you again, Karmen, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks, Devin. You too.